It's usually we have a whole lot of time to get together beforehand, have a little banter, catch up a little bit.
Yeah,
We had none of that today.
I know. It makes me incredibly nervous. So,
Just so you remember, this is we do this podcast. We do it every couple of weeks. It's actually on your YouTube channel, which is called the Midlife Pilot.
We do this podcast.
Oh boy,
we're on the internet. I hear me.
Actually,
yeah, I hear me and me. Okay, sorted that out. All right, so now all the things are working. So what do you know? I mean, I don't know. Your living room looks exactly like a hangar. It's crazy.
Thank you.
What are you drinking there?
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola Classic. Do they still do that? Classic?
I don't think so. I don't know. No, this is Coca-Cola Original Taste.
When was that? Like that was maybe what 1985 or so when they
Definitely when I was in school.
Yeah, new Coke, and then it ended up being the best marketing ploy ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think? Should we do it?
Yeah, let's get into it. I think we got some people already in the chat, and they're gonna also be sharing the link out, so we'll get some more folks in here too.
Awesome. All right. Let's do it. And good evening. And welcome inside the Midlife Pilot Podcast, episode 21, where we're going to talk about, instrument rating. It's been a topic of a hot topic for us lately, and for a lot of reasons. But tonight has a little bit of a twist. We're going to talk about should we get our instrument rating now, or are there reasons not to? And we'll kind of dive into some of that. My name is Chris Moran. I'm the Midlife Pilot on YouTube and other places. And to my right, your left, is the one and only Brian Siskind of Music Row.
Music Row. You do this all the time. Music Row. Like I'm sitting here, there's studios right out here, which by the way, Music Row is just condos now. It's not even. But anyway, hey, how's it going, man? I'm glad you made it. I know you're slammed busy today, and it looks like you're just able to just pick up and place a podcast wherever you happen to be, which is great for everybody here.
Yeah, fortunately, we've actually been working up here at the airport on a Wi-Fi project, and we have extended wireless all across the airport now and in our hangars, and so we have really good broadband available to our hangar tenants at the airport. Whoa. Which is pretty exciting.
Are you sort of like the mayor or something there already, or how's that work?
Not the mayor. I am on the. I serve as vice president on the airport authority here at the airport, and I run a flying club called Fairmont Flying Club here at the airport with 35 members and 3 airplanes, including the beautiful 150 sitting behind me.
So you're the mayor. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So, as we do, we have topics, and then people here know very well that we'll start off with a topic, and then, we'll see what happens. Things do tend to kind of go their own way, and we just kind of roll with it. But definitely get your messages in our chat, and we'll pull them up on the screen as we're going. And for the larger, audience for us is the listening audience only. So that's the way we can kind of bring your chat into the audio podcast. So make sure you get all your things in there. And I guess we are terrible at the housekeeping part of podcasting. We're so bad at it. And so we'll just do the uncomfortable thing now and just remind people to do you have to like it. You have to, what else? You share it, or you subscribe, or you follow, or you review, and just smear the internet with anything you can find Midlife Pilot podcast wise, with something positive, hopefully. And maybe that's the best housekeeping we can come up with right now, but we're not very good at it.
That's right. But that was pretty well done, I have to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, look, hopefully we'll get to a point where we can start doing like super chats, and then then we'll have maybe enough for, I don't know, a few gallons of fuel or something. So that would be really cool if we can get to that. Seems a little presumptuous, and weird to do the super chat thing, don't you think?
Yeah, a little. I do
So
have to
we should
acknowledge.
try to do
I
it.
do have to acknowledge Ivy in the chat room asking, "Did you get permission from the owners of that plane to use our hangar for business?" The owners of this plane are in this chat and follow our podcast pretty regularly. But I do have to remind Ivy of the exclusive use term of our contract, which basically means, as the president of the flying club, it's my hangar and airplane during the term of the lease. So, but yes, I'm sure that you and BG would certainly have granted permission had I asked. But yeah, uh, I bet you, yeah, you should be proud that I picked this hanger of the three that I had to choose from, because it does have the really nice looking tail behind me.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
yeah. Thanks for. Now we're even that much more clear on the terms and conditions, and seems like you could probably live there if you wanted.
I kind of do, and I love it up here. Hey,
Yeah.
you have had a busy couple weeks. I'm sure that you have a quick update for us on your cross country journey. It was quite a trek. I followed you very closely on your trip, and it looked pretty incredible.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, it was. So the way that I'm set up here, it's like I have the airport that's really close to my house where I can rent the flight school planes and do short little jaunts or currency flights. And then I have a club plane that I have access to that's an hour and a half away that I can take long trips in. And so I try to do one long trip every month. And when I say long trip, I mean, it depends on the length of it. But, we did the midlife pilot fly in. That kind of got me sort of my teeth cut on really long, cross countries. And so I just wanted to do another one. And I didn't have a plan. That was I think we talked about it, but my plan was to not have a plan. I had a general idea of what I wanted to do based on what weather was available in whichever direction. Turned out the weather was best to the west and southwest. So that was the direction I headed. And I went. And right before I left, the owner of the plane said, the plane was just coming out of 100-hour, which I didn't love, that it was just worked on. I mean, I like that it's maintained, but like, let's get a couple flights in with some other sucker before me, right? No, but and then he said that there was some issue with one of the cylinders. I think they replaced one of the cylinders, and so that kind of had my eyebrows raised a little bit. And then he said that there was an oil leak the day before I was to take the plane. And then he had the mechanic come and sort that out. And he basically said, hey, on your first leg of your trip, why don't you make it a short one and just see what's going on? So, everything seemed fine. I got to the plane, everything looked fine. So I flew from Winchester, Tennessee to Muscle Shoals, got out, checked everything, and I had no problems along the way. Got some RC Cola and some moon pies, which they have there, and then fueled up again, and then headed to, I guess it was, I want to say Tupelo, Mississippi. Then I went on to, um, I guess it was Greenville, Mississippi, and then I stayed overnight there. I really got a good lesson in how FBOs are interconnected sometimes, and that can be a real benefit. When I was that's right, I was in Tupelo before on my way to Greenville. They said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Greenville." They said, that FBO closes at 5 o'clock, right? And I was like, mm. And I said, they said, "How do you plan on getting around there?" I was like, "Well, I just figured I'd just call an Uber or whatever." And they were, they were like, "Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty decent size." And they were like, "Yeah, you don't want to. There's a lot of areas. You know what? Why don't we just, what? We run that FBO too. Let me just get on the phone here." They called, arranged for me to have the crew car when I got there, and arranged for it um, for me to just keep it overnight. They didn't care at all. So I stayed in this really cool hotel that's on the levee there, right on the Mississippi. It was really cool. Explored around there. Then it went on to McKinney, Texas, and that was my final destination. I spent a couple days there. Where it got interesting was on the way back. The weather was coming, and I got from McKinney to Shreveport, Louisiana, and then had to kind of put it down there for a minute and check what was going on. It wasn't good. I ended up stuck in Shreveport for 2 nights. So it ended up being a great experience. I was diving into weather and harder probably than I ever have. And I had a small window after being there for 2 nights where I could get out. I did some scud running, thanks to, if you haven't heard our episode with Carrie, the ferry pilot, we talked a lot about scud running on that episode. And honestly, a lot of the things that he talked about really were in my head for my trip out of Shreveport. I definitely was flying out at about, I don't know, 1900 or 2000, for a while. And then things slowly improved. And then I just kind of threaded the needle through some thunderstorms and flew. I guess that was about a 4 hours of flying run. Total is maybe about 6 hours each way. But anyway, it was great. I definitely I'm summarizing a lot, but it was a lot of challenges. I felt like when I got back that I had grown a lot as a pilot, and that was the best part of it. Is you just I stretched my boundaries healthily without it being something overwhelming or dangerous, and I had a great adventure.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, it looks super fun. I followed a lot of your pictures on Instagram, and
Yeah.
obviously had your plane up on flight aware most of the time, seeing what you were into. But it looked awesome, and
I had one moment where when I actually got to McKinney. This is the thing about when you have your minimums, and you're trying to stick to them and everything. I definitely had a moment where I was like, okay, this is definitely beyond my minimums, but I'm at my destination in McKinney, Texas. Where else am I gonna like? It's not gonna be any better anywhere else.
mhm.
Like I've got to put this thing down. But it was gusty crosswind, about 15 knots, and you know, I had to do a go around the first time through, and then the second time through, I got it down. I hadn't had to fight one down like that in a while. It was a very good experience. It was
That's good.
fine.
Yep,
It
that's
was
good for
fine.
you.
And then the owner of the plane contacted me later. He's like, "Hey, so I know I was following you, and I noticed you took an extra lap around the pattern there. Like, what's going on?" I was like, "I was doing a go around.
Yeah, leave me alone. Get
Leave
off
me
me.
alone. Being
Go
safe."
rounds are free.
Yeah,
And actually, it was better for him. He got a little extra cash because the Hobbs ran a little more. So,
exactly.
well, I've balanced out your few weeks of flying by in the last 30 days having logged 0.8 hours. So I've balanced out your like 700 hours with like 0.8. Um,
Uh,
Pretty uneventful, but I just took a 150 up for a little bit and said, oh, I still remember how to do this, and so that was that.
hey, so Zach, you can scroll down there, but
I saw it.
passed his private pilot check ride on Thursday. All right, man. What a huge relief that is, right? It's like a weird thing between an accomplishment and just a dire relief.
Absolutely, I
Well
remember it
done.
well. That's awesome. Good for you. So we've mentioned at the top of the show, we've been talking in our own circles a lot about instrument rating, because it seems that that's a place that a lot of us are kind of in and kind of flirting around this idea. In fact, we had a patrons only midlife pilot hangout the other night, where that was a huge topic of conversation, was kind of instrument rating. And I had to let you set this up. This was kind of your concept, but I mean, we could start by saying I don't think there's anyone in the world who would disagree with the notion that an instrument rating is a good thing for a pilot to have. I mean, we'll just get that out of the way first. I mean, there are significant safety benefits. There's ability to fly more. I mean, there's a ton of benefits to having one, but the timing of when you get it, there are also questions about whether you should jump right in or should we wait a little bit. Why don't you set that topic up? That's because I thought you had a really interesting kind of idea for this.
Yeah. So yeah, nobody's arguing that a car with windshield wipers is better than one without. It certainly is, better to have an instrument rating, and it's also better to own a TBM and have 10,000 hours, and you know it's better to have a lot of things, but yeah. So here's the idea is, I just feel like this has been coming up a lot, and it's really a projection of my own inner struggle. So as I mentioned, I got stuck in Shreveport last week, for 2 nights. Um, I could have gotten out of there with, I could have just punched through. There was a point where on the second day, if I would have had an instrument rating, I would have gotten out of there. And yet I was stuck, for another day. Um, I didn't feel too much pain about it because I was still within the window of time that I'd allotted, and that's what you have to do as a VFR pilot is you add buffer to your trips and all this. But I really felt like, oh man, this is that moment that everybody talks about where, you get stuck and you're just thinking, man, if I had an instrument rating, I'd be home by now or whatever. All that being said, I had that much more of an amazing kind of adventure and experience by just being stuck somewhere and meeting people and tooling around town. And, like it wasn't like some miserable thing. I did a lot of planning to make sure I stayed at class Delta or stopped at class Deltas the whole time. I wanted to be near civilization as opposed to the Ocracoke incident.
Yes.
So, anyway, so the conversation, at least that we were having, is around this idea of when to do it, because I feel like that there are pros and cons to doing it right away, as a lot of people do. I mean, there's a lot of people that have been flying for a year and they're CFIs or CF double Is or whatever. Is that really the best thing? So when you think about the midlife pilot niche in terms of nobody's looking for a career here, we're not on a career track. It really forces you to sort of take pause from the noise of everything that you see and what everybody else is doing. You kind of have to stop for a second and go, okay, well, I'm not necessarily like all these other people. I have very specific types of missions. I don't own an airplane. I don't know, I'm just in a different spot, so it got me thinking um about when to do it. And when I got home, my first thought was, oh man, I'm doing this right away. I am doing this right away. Just my instinct was, that was my sign that it's time to get the instrument rating. But then, I started really reintroducing my brain to the costs, the time investment. What are the opportunity costs relative to my work or whatever else? How much energy do I really have to give to it? It's a different type of thing than the private pursuit. It's a more heady kind of a thing. Um, and then at the end of the day, what am I really getting for that money? So let's just call it what, like, 12 grand, 14 grand, 10 grand. I don't know.
Arguably, I mean, the you could argue the requirements. Like, I feel like when I actually jump in to do mine, I'm going to have about 12 hours of instructor like dual time. I think I can do it in 12, and I've already got all my PIC time, my PIC cross country time, and so really it's just the long cross country time, and then the hours under the hood. So I don't know. It depends on how cheap your planes are. So I
Sure.
I, I don't know. I think you probably do it for 5,000 or less, probably, if you really
Okay.
hustled and had a
Yeah.
good deal on an airplane, which I think you do, and
Yeah, I do.
I definitely do. Um,
Well, actually, I have a reasonable deal. I would have to use one of the training aircraft here. I wouldn't be able to do the
oh,
club
that's
plane,
true. That's a good
'cause
point.
it's too far away. So, but anyway, I was just thinking about it and I was just, like, okay, well, why I kind of questioned myself about the sort of nature of just being pursuant to that. 'Cause, I'm coming up on 200 hours. I've got 195 hours or something. And, I've got whatever, like 100 hours of cross country or something or more. And, I've learned, like, everything I'm doing right now, I'm still learning a lot or getting every time I do something a little bit more beyond my envelope, I'm still getting so much back from that. I don't feel like I'm in some sort of plateau with everything else. There's a lot of mileage to get out of a VFR rating. And then I was thinking about it, just because you have an instrument rating, it's not a ticket to start flying in insane weather. You're still going to be kind of more or less considering weather on the same playing field. You're just going to give yourself a little bit more room, to be able to punch through and get out or punch through and get in. And, it's not like a ticket to just everything, right? So what am I really missing out on? I don't know. I want to do it. I definitely want to do it. Badly want to do it. You'll be a better pilot, more accurate pilot, more disciplined pilot, better control. just all the things. But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting kind of question because I feel like a lot of people just kind of do it. And then I have one more little thing to kind of throw in the mix, and I want to get people's feedback and your thoughts as well, Chris. But a friend of mine who got her private pilot license a couple months after I got mine, um, she pretty much went right into her instrument and is about done with it now. Uh, and she said, I was telling her about my dilemma, and she said, this is what she said. She said, if I were as brave as you to be taking on these long cross country trips and really, pushing myself in the way that I see that you've been, honestly, I probably wouldn't be trying to get my instrument rating right now, but I feel like I need it because I just want to have more training and I just want to be with an instructor more. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I do feel like that there's a subset of people that are not career aspiring pilot people that are kind of like, it's kind of like the people that go to high school and then they've got to go right to college and they've got to go right to grad school. Like they don't want to be out in the real world
Right.
and take a break. People do this sort of, I'm going to take a year, go to Europe or whatever. I feel like in my pilot career, I'm pondering sort of taking a year to Europe or going to like grad school or something. So anyway.
Yeah. I have thoughts. I want to get to a couple comments and questions first, and then I'll give you my where I stand on it. And I have also reevaluated my position in the 2 years. I'm coming up on 2 years since I got my private certificate, and I have
Mm.
reevaluated my position on it as well. Todd asks, how many hours do you, and he puts in parentheses, like it's an important addition to the question. How many hours do you realistically need to spend with the CFI to get your instrument? And that's a good question. The thing about the instrument rating is it is so much knowledge, and so much of that knowledge is attainable on your own time through your own study habits and mechanisms, whatever it may be that works for you. Like there's so much great video content out there now. There's so many great audio books and books and materials available that are just killing it for kind of the knowledge content part. For part 61, you only are required to have 15 instruction hours. Well, I had 3.5 of those in my private. So and after talking with some of the CFIs that I'm planning to work with, I think it's realistic, because really what you're doing with the instructor time is you're developing your instrument scan, which is one of the first things you're going to do. So you can spend time with other pilots as just safety pilots under the hood and actually be accomplishing something in that time where you're out flying around without visibility. So you get a good scan established, and then you go burn up time, share costs with a friend who can both log um, time, and you can work on your scan and do all that. So I think 15 hours is a realistic number. I really do, of training time in the aircraft, because then once you've got your scan down, you're practicing the various types of approaches, the entries into holds, holding patterns. Here's another big one that people don't think about, what a big deal it is how to use the avionics in the airplane for IFR, because there is a lot of things with that make your life so much easier if you know how to get around your Garmin 430, whatever you have, to get around it quickly can make your life much easier. So I think that's a reason. I believe that's a reasonable time with your training materials. Now, back to the original point of, I had the same intentions when I got my private in 2020, which was just immediately start. I thought, man, this is great. I'm going to immediately jump into this. And then life, you know how it is. It was such a relief after you got your private. It was nice to just like come up and fly just for the fun of it now. But like you mentioned, Brian, here's what I'm finding. I also am in the state where I'm learning new things every time I go on a trip. There's new adventures. You're expanding your comfort zone every time I fly on a new trip. I'm going at times where maybe a year ago I wouldn't have, and because I'm learning. You can look at it all you want. Weather, we talked about this the other night. Like, you can look at cloud coverage and you can do all this stuff and look at the charts and until you get in the sky and experience how you really need to maneuver around these and how you can do it, you start to really expand your horizon. I've had 2 trips recently with several instances of moderate to heavy precipitation, which a year ago would have scared the pants off of me. And then you do it a couple times and say, well, I mean, the plane still flies in the rain. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. So, but here's where I'm going to be at a better place. Let's say I start my instrument training officially now, a couple hundred hours later, 2 years later. The things I don't have to think about or that are far less workload for me now, like maintaining an altitude and heading, knowing how to trim the airplane and get the power settings right and the speeds right and how to control the plane and how things should work, and all of the things that for the first year or two took so much more brain intensity, that now I just have to um, those are just natural, and I can really focus the energy on the new stuff, the procedures, the holds, and the stuff that's going to be the hardest for me. Taking reroutes from ATC, like just all of the things that are new experiences, all while not being able to look outside the airplane. So I've changed my position a little bit now. It's an individual thing, to each their own. Like you said, some people want that break, and some people would rather keep the structured instruction going. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. The globally applies to everyone. But for me,
No.
I can't imagine now doing it any other way. I can't imagine starting my instrument training at the place I was as a pilot the day after my check ride
Right.
compared to the place I am today. I can't
Yes.
imagine starting my training at that point.
Or it's kinda like, if you did, how much would you could have made it through, obviously, but how much would you have really gotten out of it versus what you would get out of it, or what you will get out of it when you do it, with that time in between. If you don't have to do it, right, then maybe this is a valid point towards, giving it a minute, because, yeah, like, I don't I think about where I was with just, air traffic control communications,
Hmm.
even after my check ride. There's only so many cross countries I'd been on. There's only so much flight following and getting vectored around and weird anomalous things that kind of come up, and you know, after all the cross country time that I have now, I feel completely comfortable with everything to do with communications, and I don't have there's no it doesn't even really tax me, or it's nothing I'm worried about or think about. Like, it's
Right.
just you just do it and it's fine. And but I do think about when I was at 60 hours, I was still my processing, even though I was comfortable with a lot of these things, my processing time was still pretty slow.
Hmm.
So I feel like I would get much more out of it now. I guess, there's just I feel like yeah, like what you were saying about just being able to fly the airplane, and like what Macaulay was talking about, the ferry pilot, when he was talking about flying by feel. Um, this is what I've been kind of really working on, is just giving myself more opportunities to just fly the airplane just in the purest form, like, like a kid in the cul-de-sac with a bike that just learned how. Like, now I'm going to start getting on the trails and start kind of, I don't know, I'm just going to start, pushing myself just with the relationship of myself to the machine, and really trying to, because I think that when you're just out of check ride time, you're not one with the machine yet. And I just feel like I continually, I mean, every trip I take, especially the longer trips, when I'm flying, 2 or 3 hour legs, and, all that, I just feel like I really am much more in tune with the machine, which I think will obviously only help me as well. But yes, it's not a black or white thing.
Right. Stinky Weasel One says all three CFIs that I've flown with had unanimously told me to go straight into instrument training. Even had a schedule planned out before the regionals scooped them up. We had several of our club instructors. Good for them. Get good jobs at regional airlines. So that's been interesting. But yeah, uh, that is one way to go about it.
I'm not a skeptic, but I look through that and I go, okay, well, of course they're making out a schedule, right? Like, they want you to continue training. Like, I'm not trying to be a cynic here, but I'm just saying, like, one side of that could also be they're projecting their own thing because they've gone through the path of being a CFI, and
Sure.
it's like everybody else should be a CFI.
Ben Singer had an interesting response to your take on when you said, what am I missing really from from it, and he said the lost opportunities is what will hurt the most. And I mean, I think that is true. I think it's like, I think of how many days I have not been able to go somewhere because of, like you mentioned, like it's one layer that you've got to pop through. You'd be in the clouds for about 32 seconds for your entire trip, but you can't fly because of the inability to get out of
You know,
there.
what's funny is that when I read that, you know what I thought he was talking about?
What's that?
I thought he was talking about, when I was talking about sort of opportunity cost of work relative to I thought he was talking about, like, the financial
Oh, I
cost
see.
of
You're
yeah,
talking right, right, right.
but no,
I
no, of
don't
course,
think so. Uh,
opportunities to fly.
Foodhead says, "I'm not sure I completely understand the difference between comfort zone and complacency." Yeah, that's I think that is the constant struggle. Like, maybe not quite that for me. Like it is like I keep talking about, it sounds like I'm saying, boy, the more I fly, the more risks I take. It's almost what it sounds like, but that's not what it is. What I mean, I think what I'm saying is, like everyone, hopefully, starts pretty conservatively early on, as you should, overly, probably. Um, and then you experience one new thing on this flight and say, "Oh, I understand how that." I mean, how would your minimums ever change then? Like, I'm definitely willing to land in different wind conditions today than I was 2 years ago, or I'm definitely willing to accept a couple miles less visibility than I was 2 years ago, because the experience breeds an understanding of how these things work. And I think there's I think it's okay to get out of your I think it's okay to push yourself a little bit, but also understanding your limitations. And I think that's, again, an individual thing. Different people are going to have different pace with that. And mine was pretty slow, truthfully. I mean, when I look back at my training time when I was solo endorsed, I wouldn't fly on a cross country trip. There were 7 knot winds, like 10 degrees off the runway, and I'm texting my instructor like, I don't feel like I should go. And that was the one lesson where Tyler texted me back and said, like, you're never going to make it. You're never going to be a pilot if you don't fly this airplane today. Like, basically was the point. And I think, you need people knowledgeable to, like, kind of give you those moments that say, like, okay, I'm okay, and then go experience it. So
Yeah, I love that point. That's almost like an episode worthy topic, just this comfort zone versus, it's like comfort zone versus killing zone, right?
right.
It's an endless, topic because it really is something where if I feel like this can be one and the same, like complacency can be, just, your comfort zone may be disguised as complacency or vice versa.
And I want
Uh,
to disclaim too that I am not encouraging people to, like, go do things that they're not comfortable with. Like, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying, for me personally, it became a thing that, as I had more experiences, intentionally or not, like, I'm going somewhere and then the winds aren't what they were forecast at my destination, and I had to land in a condition that and I'm like, oh, I see. So that's what an 8 knot crosswind feels like. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you kind of get into these things, and that how else do you learn? I mean, I don't know how else you really fully um kind of grasp that until you experience these things. Kind of like what Todd's asking now in the chat. Not to ask all the questions, he says, but wondering how willing you are to go VFR over the top without an instrument rating. I can think of at least 4 cross country trips where I've spent at least uh, half an hour or more with no ground visibility. And including, except that I had visibility. I don't want to. I had visibility as a student pilot. My first long cross country I took, not was my second one, to the Greenbrier to Lewisburg. The clouds ended up being more extensive than I thought. I never lost contact with the ground on that trip, but, like, I had to change my planned altitude to get above them, which was not in my plan, like, when I left that day. Um, but I made the decision to do it. I'm less worried about that. Because I think that in an emergency, um, I could manage that now. I don't know that I would have been as comfortable right afterwards for, like, long periods of time spending time on top of the cloud. It depends on where I'm at to the terrain. I wouldn't do a mountain crossing in that condition, probably, where there's really nowhere to go in an emergency. But I think with a reasonable flight plan and options below, I feel like if I had to get vectored somewhere and I had to punch through at this stage. I could do it in an absolute emergency if I had to.
Yeah, I'm a little less than that for that one. I mean, I've done, for me it's like, um I consider it the same way I evaluate ceilings for my minimums to go or no go anyway. And if it's in the broken, or overcast category, and I'm not going above them probably. I got to be able to see the ground, and then I need to know that things are trending towards not closing up. But I still haven't really done that.
Yeah. So I have an interesting circumstance. The flight path that I've been taking the most from West Virginia to the East Coast, there is invariably a section between here and there on one side of the mountain ridge or the other where there is a pocket of clouds, and you can see it from miles away. So you know you're approaching it, and then there's a brief period of time where I have found myself in over an area where I did not have reasonable ground contact for a period, but I'm always checking ahead. Like if I wouldn't set out on a mission if I looked like the entire East Coast was going to be that way, where I couldn't get down later. But typically, it's like no clouds, or like broken, scattered. Then a bunch of clouds like on one side or the other of the mountain, depending on the winds and the other conditions, and then it clears up again on the other side, and then it's fine the rest of the way. So I would not just barge out into a trip where like the last 2.5 hours of my trip was questionable and
Yeah.
the whole East Coast was under cover. I wouldn't do that.
Uh, s- uh, One dull geek had a question about to me about, if you're not going to pursue your instrument rating, then what are you going to do to keep yourself learning through the killing zone? Well, so let's just be clear. I'm not saying I'm not going to pursue the rating. I'm just saying I think I'm inclined to continue to delay getting that rating. And what I'm going to do in the meantime to keep learning is to do exactly what I've been doing. I mean, because ultimately, um, I'm keeping up with my night currency. I'm, going on long cross countries. I'm challenging myself, in all those ways. And there's still actually some things I'd like to do just with an instructor. I'd like to go down to Sewanee and train and do upset recovery and spin training, or there's just so much stuff that you can do
Mm-hmm.
that's really ambitious learning
Tail
with.
wheel.
Right, yeah, like all within the scope of the VFR sphere. So there's plenty to do there. And as
And I
far
got
as,
my high performance endorsement. That was a
right,
thing.
yeah,
That was a
complex or
learning.
whatever.
Yeah,
And then and as far as the killing zone part of it goes, um I mean, to be totally honest, I feel like if other people might disagree with this, and that's fine. I feel like possibly the safest, if I'm really thinking about, man, I've got to make it to 300 hours, or 350 or whatever it is, I've got to get another 150 hours unscathed somehow. I really do feel like tending toward VFR conditions and continuing to build on the types of skills that I'm building on are probably some of the safest things I can possibly be doing. And ultimately, IMC, you're looking at then introducing the variables of icing and other things. So I don't know. Maybe it's the safer way. I don't know. But I'm not saying it's safer to not have an instrument
for
rating.
sure. No, absolutely not.
I'm
Right.
just saying, like, in the near term, specific to this question, it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's fine.
If I'm being honest and trying to evaluate myself honestly, and humans by nature are terrible at kind of self-evaluating. So it's not like even when you're trained to like you are as a pilot to evaluate yourself, it's still very hard to do. I feel like I am as safe of a pilot today as I've ever been. Like, no, well, maybe not when I have 8/10 of an hour and an airplane in the last 6 weeks, maybe not. But like when we took the 150 out, we didn't video. Cecilia went with me the other day. We went out and just did some maneuvers. So we took a great takeoff. We went out to the practice area. Got flight falling in the practice area. Did some steep turns and some stuff. And I thought, boy, those were on point. Like I nailed we flew through our own wake both times on steep turns. I was like, right on point. Um, Came in for landing. We did 3 or 4 landings. I had Stallhorn blaring on every one of them. I mean, it was right on the touchdown point. Cecilia even commented like that was those all were dead like on the center line. Like I mean, so I'm just saying, and like you mentioned, the feel of the airplane and stuff obviously applies less when you're in IMC and you got the hood on because you know you don't trust your feel. But like just flying VFR, I'm just finding every time I go that it's I just understand aerodynamically what's happening to this airplane, and I just think it's from repetition and the time I've spent on. I don't think you. We talk about learning all the time. Learning happens with or without an instructor, with or without a book. I mean, like every time you go experience something new, whether in aviation or otherwise, you're learning things if you're doing it, you know, intentionally. And I just believe strongly that I'm as safe today, just from my gained experiences over the last 200 hours that I've ever been. Like I really believe that I'm as safe as I've ever been. It's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think I think also for some people, uh like I was saying, it's like being in the training environment for just a longer span is just really welcome for some people. I do you miss training sometimes? Do you ever have like a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's something to that sort of mode, you know, but you gotta be up for it.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
the other thing. I don't wanna mess around with it. The other reason I haven't got serious about it is I know I don't have the bandwidth right now to commit, and I'm
right.
not gonna screw around and half do it. I mean, because I mean, the other thing is, I mean, this is I'm not being I could probably half do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
learn what I needed to learn to pass the written,
Mhm.
get my flying stuff enough, and go take the check ride and probably do it. But I don't wanna have to. I wanna do it like I did my private, which was all in, committed, like, doing it to the best of my ability. So that's kinda why I'm waiting for the
Yeah.
appropriate moment.
The well, and Wendell Geek's got, you know, he's gonna have the video series, and
Yeah.
Josh, who's usually in here, he's well on his way. There's a lot of people that are gonna be doing that. So we can let people get ahead of us, Chris, and then see what mistakes they make and then not repeat them.
One Dog Geek says, the fact that both of you guys aren't ready to start instrument means I've got a ton of time to complete my video series. That's right. And but just don't wait too long because I need to use it. I need to use it to help me through my training. We can return the favor here this time, Mark. Like, um, I'll watch your series for that. There's a couple questions about flight simulators as training aids. Foodhead asks, what do you guys think of Microsoft Flight Simulator as a training tool? And then Fowler's talking about an X-plane fan, but not for hand coordination, but for procedures, flows, and radios, which I totally agree. Here's I've been an X-plane simmer forever. That's actually, I was doing that years before I became a pilot. And one thing that was shocking to me when I flew for real was how much you just don't know what it feels like until you're in the real plane. And part of that, there's so many technical reasons for that, and things are getting better. It depends on how much money you want to spend on a sim. Like you can get proper yokes now that have like the full travel range of a real one, but like my Logitech yoke has a travel range that's about 5 or 6 inches. Like you can't gauge. I mean, it's compressed into such a small, like every move, like you go to rotate on the runway in 172 and the thing's like, you know, stall, like your nose is 30 degrees up in the air. So there definitely is a feel thing. But I think when you, especially during instrument training, which I'm sure is what you're asking about here, like when you don't have to worry about the outside look, when it's really less about the flying the plane and how it feels as it is like tracking a VOR, like setting up for an approach, flying the right. I mean, and that stuff, especially if you pair it with a service like Pilot Edge, the online air traffic control paid service. Where you can actually go do instrument flights and instrument approaches, and they will actually do. I mean, you're provided with real controller services like vectors to your. I mean, it's the real deal. Set your visibility the way you want it, so you're not even can't see. It's set the clouds to minimums and go fly some approaches. I think for instrument training, there's a ton to be gained, and if you've got the money to spend, I don't know how many of you have looked around at it, but I mean, the stuff that folks are making, real sim gear, and some of these other folks are making accessories. If you've got the money to invest, like you can build a cockpit. I mean, you can get your real Garmin G40, 430, 530 sets, or even the new Garmin avionics panels, G5s. I mean, you can build a thing in front of you that is the realest thing you can imagine. It pairs with ForeFlight. You can use your iPad. I mean, it's pretty wild, and I think pretty beneficial for instrument.
I've never used a flight simulator in my entire life. Oh no, no, wait. Back in 1983 or 84, my dad had an Osborne computer. I don't know if you remember those. Had like the amber screen. It's like a
Mm-mm.
little
Mm.
5-inch amber screen with the giant floppies, 5 and a quarter inch floppies. It had a flight simulator, and I remember playing on that as a kid, but that's about it. So yeah, I don't know anything about that world, but it seems like, I mean, the flight school up here has a $50 an hour certified sim, that I can apply towards training. So that's another way I could, definitely get what 10. You can do 10 hours, I think.
Yeah, and it's for the stuff that matters. I mean, if you know how to fly the airplane, I mean the stuff that you can knock out in a sim, programming the avionics, learning how to fly, enter a hold the right way, and fly your holds, timed holds or whatever. I mean, you can that stuff is it's very worth the cost savings, I think, to do in a simulator, a certified simulator like that. Take your instructor with you, and
Yeah.
it's very beneficial. So we don't have one locally that I know of, or I would probably consider that as well for some of my time. But
Yeah. Um, so what is on your shirt, by the way?
this is I'm repping my buddy Angle of Attack.
Oh yeah.
This is one of his merch wears. It says Bushin', and it's got a image of his 172. Actually, it's not his 172 because this is a tail wheel, and his is a nose wheel with big bush planes on it. November 2423 uniform, up in Homer, Alaska. Check him out if you haven't. Chris Palmer at angleofattack.com. Speaking of training resources, he has a whole series of training resources as well as a cool YouTube channel. So
Yeah, he puts out great stuff. Mike Hines said, "Where's the sim near me?" At John Toon. I'm near John Toon Airport, and I go to Harmony Air is where I trained, and so they've got a simulator there. You can find them at harmonyair.com.
I don't want to mispronounce. How would you pronounce his name? Banrear.
Bon Rear
Banrear.
Cardo.
Just got my private pilot certificate in July and decided to reward myself for 100 hours with a tailwheel endorsement. But I agree with Chris. I can't commit the time I would want to for instrument right now. Yep, that is the boat. That is the boat that I am in. If I can only manage 8/10 of an hour in a 6-week period, I am not equipped to be doing serious instrument training right now.
Yeah, it's tough because there's a fine line between broadening yourself out of curiosity. Like the tail wheel endorsement's a great example. It's like I'm probably not going to have access to or be flying any tail wheels. So if I got that endorsement, it'd be like, great, I have a tail wheel endorsement that now I can't really maintain any proficiency with because I don't really actually have access to one of those planes. And then I think about instrument rating the same. It's like, if you got every 6 months you have to do, meet your requirements, and you have this other thing you've got to nurture and maintain. It's not just get the rating and you're done.
That's right.
And then if you don't, I guess, what is it? If you go a year and really slack on it, then you've actually got to go back to do a review with a CFI and all
Yeah,
that.
there's a lot of boxes to check, and I wouldn't want to be. That's not one that I would want to be slopping around with anyway. Where it's
Right.
like, oh yeah, I've got my instrument rating. I haven't used it for months, but now today is the day I'm just going to do that. And it's like, I would want to make sure that I was ready to commit to staying on top of it, and being good at flying that way if I was going to do it.
Oh yeah, thanks, Mike Hines. Yeah, I've been reaching out to Catherine and Sewanee, and I just haven't been able to catch her. She's a very busy person. She's the one that's got she does the spin training and upset recovery and all that. And I have heard good things about Ron Dillard in Lebanon as well. So, by the way, in Tennessee, we don't call things by their proper names. Like, see where it says Lebanon, but that's the quick way to get outed as a not local. It's Lebanon.
Lebanon. Vincent Carbonara says, my CFI says it's best to learn IFR on a plane equipped with G1000 since it's easier. True or false? I think it's best to learn on whatever you're going to be flying after you get your rating. So I would tend to think that if you're going to be flying a G1000, then probably best. I'm spoiled in that the planes that I'm going to be flying are both equipped with G5s and have, I know that's not the latest and greatest, but it definitely, just in my hood time so far, is a tremendous situational awareness booster. When you talk about an instrument scan on an old analog 6-pack, which is, you've got to develop your scan pattern or whatever. But on a plane equipped with G5s, your scan is basically this instrument. Like everything is condensed into like a 3
Mm,
inch by 3 inch square.
yeah.
Everything you need is in front of you pretty much all the time. And, so, I my advice would be, and as again, I'm not a professional nor am I an instructor giving instruction advice, but I would think that flying on whatever as closely resembles what you're going to fly after you're done would be what I would
Yeah,
suggest.
that's ultimately the practical answer. I mean, and the other thing too is I've actually thought about this same kind of issue with respect to an autopilot. Um, it you know you guys can tell me that are down the road with instrument or have your instrument rating, but it seems like having an autopilot would be an incredible help to to doing all that. At the same time, there's probably a lot of value in getting the skill and the discipline and the focus of hand flying it. So,
Congratulations, another newly minted private in the chat tonight.
oh, nice.
Lido666 just wanted to share. I got my private pilot certificate on Monday. Wow, congratulations! 2 days old.
Yeah, we should have like a check ride confessionals or something on here. Um,
That's great.
yeah,
Mike
that's really
Hines'
great.
good point too is that he says tail wheel helped with rudder control. Had gotten lazy with rudder trim. Well, I
Mm,
have rudder trim in one of my two planes, but yeah, that's not my plane. Two planes that I fly. But yeah, I've heard that from everybody I've talked to. And my buddy Tyler Lucas, who you guys might remember from my training, my instructor for my private, he owns a Citabria and has been begging an aerobatic Citabria and is begging me to go with him. He wants me to work on my tail wheel and he wants me to fly aerobatically. And I'm like, we'll see. But I would like to do my tail wheel. I think there's a ton of benefit from that. I think there's a ton of great lessons from learning to fly a tail wheel.
yeah, and that's what I think is interesting, right? Like it's a there's the pragmatism of a rating as far as fly what you're going to fly or what you have access to, but then there's the interdisciplinary value of having gone through particular experiences. I mean, spin training is not a rating necessarily, but it's like I guarantee that after I've gone through that, it's not going to be something I'm going to be pursuant to do all the time.
Right.
But having been through it, I will have something that I can kind of carry with me,
Yeah,
and
that's
that'll
right.
be good, assuming I survive. Yeah.
Oh, you'll survive. Pair, baby, pair.
Pair. No, the woman who's I don't she's got the world record for what is it? Uh she's got it's on video. I think it's a yeah, I think it's a world record. Uh
For what,
she's
most spins?
y- yeah, Mike Hines will know. Yeah, this is what I'm saying, man. I really it's like I want to have one hell day with Catherine and just come out of that like I survived it. It's kind of expensive ish, it's sort of like one of those. It's like an $800 day or something. But I mean, you know, maybe she'll just give you a discount if you just spend only 10 times, or if you just don't puke in her plane.
Oh my gosh.
Have you had a passenger get sick yet?
No, but I will. No, I have.
Dude,
Well, there's a story. I don't want to out anybody, but there's a story of the night before my check ride. So
was the night before my check
I
ride.
was very worked up as I get and was super stressed about my check ride and it had been postponed a bunch of times. We did the oral and then the flight portion was postponed 3 or 4 times and um he may hear this. My buddy Tyler, my instructor had taken someone else out in 52 Lima the day before my check ride for a flight and I came in the next morning. I had to take it to Clarksburg for my check rides. Of course, I was here early, like hours before I was had to leave. I just wanted to be here and around, and I opened the door to the plane and I could just smell vomit.
Oh,
And I texted Tyler and I said, "What happened to this airplane?" He said, "Oh, I thought we cleaned it all." And then I proceeded, and I apologized to him profusely because he's like the nicest person in the entire world. I love Tyler. I lost my mind on him. It was a profanity lace. It was like one of those, like, how could you do this to me on like, how could you do, I got to go pick up a DP, like, how could you do this to me?
innocent bystander.
I was convinced that it was over. Like, I should just cancel. I thought I'm just going to call him and cancel. I can't do this. And so he said, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?" And I said, "I want you to go to Walmart, buy every cleaning supply that you can find and get here like right now." And he did. And we went through that airplane, vacuumed the carpets and the seats and, like, deodorant. I mean, we went crazy. And needless to say, everything was fine and it went fine. And I apologize profusely for my behavior. There's no excuse for that. But I was on a line, and, like, it didn't take
Yeah.
much for me to just break. And that was it. I was like, of all days, like, that's, as far as I know, it's the only time anyone has ever been sick in this airplane in its history. And it was literally like 18 hours before my check ride. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me right now. Anyway, that's my only
I can't
story.
believe we never heard about this before.
Yeah,
This is
I
good
don't tell
stuff.
it because, I don't want to, it's
This is the
fine.
kind of stuff that I really want people to put in their YouTube videos. I'm so tired of all this sanitized stuff, right? Like I
Well,
want
there it is.
actually, well, sanitized is double meaning here,
Exactly.
but I mean, I thought that you were gonna tell me that, uh, not only did the plane smell of vomit and then you yell at Tyler, but then I thought you were gonna go into a I thought it was gonna be one of those, and then I started cleaning it, and then the smell got me sick, and then I was throwing up or something.
I asked the examiner after we got back, and he's like, "I didn't smell a thing." I said, "Thank God," because I was so stressed about it.
Gosh. Yeah,
Hey,
you were
Todd.
just
Todd has a check ride on Saturday. Todd says, "My check ride is Saturday. I'm already stressed about how stressed I'm going to get." Yeah, I will say, I've told people before, I way over stressed. It was one of the greatest experiences. I mean, it was so positive on all fronts. And it's impossible not to get worked up. Like, how often in your adult life are you really examined in a way that's as thorough as this, with a knowledge and a performance test? I mean,
yeah.
it is a lot, but it really, with the right DPE, it really is a good experience.
Yeah, it's also just kind of, I think one of the ways I kind of packaged it in my mind that I try to tell people is I say, ultimately, you want a good evaluation. You want to be put through that because you want to know that you're worthy of the certificate and that you're going to keep people safe and your family
Right.
and your friends and whatever. And so just, avail yourself to that examination from a human perspective and then take your shots, do the best you can. And, I mean, don't sabotage yourself by, saying, boy, I really screwed that up or,
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
Or boy, that's pretty off, huh? But, ultimately it's a realistic evaluation for you to keep your friends and family safe and yourself safe and other people safe. And, just the outcome will be whatever it is. And ultimately you're not going to just fail the first thing that he asks you to do. You might fail like one of the last things. Who knows? It might happen. It happens to people all the time. But either way, you're going to get a whole bunch of it. If you just think of it as like a laundry list of to-dos, you're going to get a lot of that to-do list done.
Yep.
And, so that's the worst case scenario is you get a bunch of stuff done towards your license.
Well, Brian, thank you for podcasting with me tonight.
Hey, thanks for allowing me to be here.
And thank you to everyone in the chat. As a reminder, if you're listening to this audio podcast, you can join us every other Wednesday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, and join us on YouTube in the Midlife Pilot channel. Just join us there, subscribe, and turn on the bell to be notified so you don't miss an episode. This is how you interact with us on the show, is by being with us live, and so we love the interaction. I'm going to ask this, and then we're going to leave. Are we? Did you want to say anything about the next episode, or are we going to wait and do that later because we don't really know yet?
Oh, we've been talking about it for a while because we keep kicking the can down here because of schedule availabilities and such. But I have reasonable confidence that we'll be joined on the next episode by SoCal Flying Monkey Eric, and I think that that's going to be awesome. So, um, you know, to have a room full of weird, creative gearhead video filmmaking, flight nerds. It'll be a blast, I think, to have him on, and I'm super stoked about. I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, I have so many questions to ask you. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
and I'm sure that everybody here will too. So make sure you get here for the live version of that one.
For sure. Thank you again, everyone. We will see you in 2 weeks on the Midlife Pilot Podcast.